All right, so today's reading is Genesis 28, verse 5 through 28:9. This is the seventh portion for Parshat Toldos, and we begin with the Torah blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us in his commandments and commanded us to engage in the study of the words of Torah. So, verse 5 begins with the words, Vayishlach Yitzchak et Yaakov, vayelech b'dana Aram, El Lavan ben Betuel Arami Achi Rivcha em Yaakov Esav. And Isaac sent Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Betuel the Aramean, the brother of Rivka, the mother of Yaakov and Esav. Now, as you remember in yesterday's reading, Esav is seeking to now kill his brother Yaakov for tricking me these two times, first by taking my birthright and then by stealing my blessing. But we also talked about how that's not really what happened. It was just Esav's perception of what happened. Nevertheless, he sought to console himself over killing his brother Yaakov. So here his mother tells him to flee to the house of Lavan, and then partnered with Yitzchak. They tell him, while you're there, find a wife. And the primary reason for this is because hopefully by the time you go and find a wife and bring her back, not only will you begin to build your own family and have offspring from a place where there are God-fearing women, but also be able to wait until your brother's anger abides and that he won't kill you, and you'll be able to partner back again with friendship. So we'll find that out in future portions as to whether or not that actually happens. But anyway, looking back at this verse, there's something very interesting about mentioning Em Rivka, or Rivka Em Yaakov Esav, that Rivka is the mother of Jacob and Esau. Like, we already know this. This has already been mentioned in the Torah's text multiple times. So the question is, why is it here? And Rashi's comment actually makes me laugh a little bit. He goes, I don't know what this teaches us. And I think that this shows obviously the fact that even the commentators are human and they don't always have the answers to everything. Now, the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachmanides, who was a sage, also lived in the Middle Ages, that he comments and says that this comes to teach us that Yaakov was sent by Yitzchak and Rivka to the land of Padan Aram in order to find a wife, but they did not send Esav. And the reason for this is because of the fact that they had already decided upon Yaakov as being the one who would inherit the mantle of leadership for the family, as well as, of course, the birthright, which comes with its specific role as a priest of the family, but also the blessings of the heavens and the earth if they are obedient. So that's what the Ramban says this comes to teach us. The Baal HaTurim actually says that the mentioning of Rivka being the mother of both Jacob and Esau, it mentions that she's the mother of both because this decision to send Jacob away was based on the fact that she was the mother to both of them. She knew by keeping them together that they would kill each other, and that ultimately this would lead to the destruction of her entire household. So out of her motherly duties to both sons, she sends one son away where he can be safe, where he can find a wife and start a family. And we indeed see that this happens, but also to be able to keep the other brother from doing something he would sincerely regret, and something that ultimately that she would regret, which is the bloodshed of her family. And so this is what this passage on a very literal level can come to teach us. It says in verse 6, Esav saw that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov and sent him away. So all of a sudden, Esav is kind of going, hey, what's going on here, right? He's already made up his mind that when Yitzchak dies, he's going to kill his brother, but his brother's now being sent away. Now, in one sense, you could think Esav's thinking, they're just trying to get him away from me, so I'm not going to go kill him. But on the other hand, this was a thought he had in his heart that Rivka only knew by the Holy Spirit. So what is it that he actually sees? He sees Isaac had blessed Jacob, that Jacob had received God's stamp of approval and had received Isaac's stamp of approval, but that he also sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife. And so Esav, who, remember, exemplified the mitzvah, or the commandment of honoring your father, was like, what gives? Why are you sending him to Padan Aram to receive a wife from there? And that when he, and not me, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, saying, you shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And it was in that moment that Esav really knew how terrible these wives that he had married made his parents feel, how disgusted, how grieved, how pained they were of having idolatrous daughters-in-law. This was something that was detestable to them, and he now really understood that. And so it says here in verse 7 to Yaakov's merit, Vayishma Yaakov el Aviav, that Jacob listened to his father, ve'el imu, and to his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. He was exemplifying in himself the commandment to honor your father and your mother. And of course, Rashi comments on this verse saying that this is connected to the aforementioned topic, that when Esav saw that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov and that he had sent him off to Padan Aram, Yaakov listened to his father and went to Padan Aram, and that the daughters of Canaan were displeasing to his father. So what does he do? In his misplaced zeal to honor his father, despite the fact that they didn't tell him to marry anybody else, he had 2 wives of his own that were from the Hittites. He goes off and he marries his cousin from the daughters of Ishmael, who are closer, granted, in their family, but still not what they asked him to do. So in his misplaced zeal to honor his father, he goes off and he marries one of the daughters of Ishmael. Verse 8, it says, Esav saw that the daughters of Canaan were displeasing to his father Yitzchak, and Esav went to Ishmael, and he took Mahalat, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, the sister of Naviot, in addition to his other wives, as a wife. Okay? So looking at Rashi here, we have to kind of understand the comment. He says it's kind of superfluous to say the daughter of Ishmael and the sister of Naviot. Since it says the daughter of Ishmael, do I not know that she is the sister of Naviot? But this teaches us that Ishmael died after he had betrothed her to Esav before her marriage, and her brother Naviot gave her hand in marriage. So this is why it comes to mention both phrases. This also teaches us that Jacob was 63 years old at that time. There's a lot of math about to happen here, so keep track. He says that Jacob was 63 years old at that time. Ishmael was 74 years old when Jacob was born. Ishmael was 14 years old when 14 years older than Isaac. And Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. Hence, Ishmael was 74. He lived 137 years, as it states in Genesis 25:17, and these are the years of the life of Ishmael. Consequently, Jacob was 63 at Ishmael's death, and we learn from here that he hid for 14 years in the house of Ever and afterwards went to Haran. So what is the Midrash really coming here to explain? And actually, it's not the Midrash, it's Rashi commenting from Tractate Megillah and the Talmud. What is this coming to explain? It's coming to explain why Jacob is the age that he is when he arrives later on in the text. It's looking back and saying, how old was he? What happened? Well, immediately after he is sent by his parents, he doesn't immediately go to Haran. Instead, as it says here, he went for 14 years and hid in the house of Ever, which remember, Shem and Ever were the Bet Midrash. This is the house of study. And he stayed there for 14 years before he then left and went to Haran to observe what his parents had done. Now, you would think he didn't honor his parents by obeying the command to go there and get himself a wife. He instead deviates and goes to the house of Shem and Ever. Well, first of all, let's look at how they deduce that he went there. And then after that, we can deduce as to whether or not he should have gone there first. It says this can be deduced from the fact that he stayed in Lavan's house before Joseph's birth, only 14 years, as it is said in chapter 31, verse 41 of Genesis, I worked for you for 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your sheep, which is a total, of course, 20 years. And the payment for the sheep took place after Joseph was born, as it says in Genesis chapter 30, verse 25, it came to pass when Rachel had given birth to Joseph, etc. And Joseph was 30 years old when he became ruler, and from then until Jacob descended to Egypt were 9 years. 7 years of plenty, 2 years of famine, total of 9 years. And Jacob said to Pharaoh in Genesis 47:9, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Go forth and figure 14 years before Joseph was born, plus the 30 years of Joseph's age, plus the 9 years from the time he became ruler until Jacob came. The total is 53. And when he, that is Jacob, left his father, he was 63, totaling 116. Yet he said to Pharaoh, I am 130 years old. Hence there are 14 years missing. Thus you learn that after he had received the blessings, he hid in the house of Ever, which was nearby, for 14 years. So he goes into the study hall for 14 years before he heads off to Haran. And of course, we have the subsequent age gaps that I just mentioned there. However, he was not punished, Rashi says, for these 14 years because of the merit of having studied Torah. For Joseph was separated from his father only 22 years, from age 17 until age 39, corresponding to the 22 years that Jacob was separated from his father when he did not honor him. And these are the 20 years in Laban's house, plus the 2 years that he spent traveling home. As it is said in Genesis 33:17, and he built himself a house for his cattle, he made booths. A rabbis of blessed memory inferred from this verse that he spent 18 months on the road, for the house was for the rainy season and booths were for the summer. And according to the calculation of the verses, which we calculated above, from the time he left his father until he went down to Egypt, at the age of 130, we find an additional 14 years. Therefore, it is certain that he hid in the house of Ever to learn Torah while on his way to the house of Laban. And because of the merit of the Torah, he was not punished for them, that is, those 14 years. And Joseph was separated from him for only 22 years, measure for measure. The above is from an old Rashi text. So the importance is this. Should he have gone straight to Haran? Sure. But because of the fact that when he deviated, he did it for a holy cause, that is to finish his studies, to study in the Bet Midrash, to go back to school essentially until he had finished and then find a wife. Maybe this is a good text to say maybe you should go to school before you get married. I don't know. But the point is that as he's traveling to Laban's house, he deviates. But because what he was doing was he was studying the Torah, he was trying to improve himself. And while he's on his way to Haran, as we're going to learn in next week's portion, he receives a vision from God. And he receives this vision of the ladder. God appears to him. And so we see a lot about Yaakov's character. He absolutely desires to honor his father and mother, but he also desires to retain the Torah that he learned. And I think this is a very important point to understand. So at this point, it says that Esav, he disregards going to Padan Aram. He doesn't go to Haran. He doesn't go to the place that his parents tell him to tell Yaakov to find a wife. And he shouldn't have even found another wife to begin with. But what he does is he goes and he grabs one of these daughters of Ishmael, Mahalot, the daughter of Ishmael. And addition, literally it says here, Al Nashav, upon his, literally to add to his wives. Lali Isha. So reading this, he adds this wife to his other wives. That is, he adds wickedness upon his wickedness. He had maybe good motives, but that good motive was sincerely clouded by poor execution. For he didn't even divorce the first ones. He just continued to add wife upon wife. And so he has these two idolatrous wives, and he has this one wife from the daughters of Ishmael, who, yeah, sure, probably monotheists, but not true monotheists. And this is someone who is not a part of the proper section of the family. It was a big mess, okay? So having recognized his actions here, one of the lessons that we can take away from today's reading is that Yitzhak was concerned about Yaakov's future offspring, that they be righteous. So he sent him to a place where God-fearing women could be found. Esav settled for idolatrous women who he didn't even trust and who caused his parents great pain. So that teaches us that when we seek a prospective spouse for ourselves, for us, or for our children, one should look within the proper place, the household of Israel, within the community, not out amongst the nations. Otherwise, it'll grieve, it'll pain, it'll cause great disgust. As the old saying goes, a husband can choose a wife, but children cannot choose their mother. Number two, the second lesson that we can learn from today's reading is that Esav mastered the mitzvah of honoring his father. It was the only mitzvah he ever really perfected, and if we can use that terminology. Something we should learn from him. Pirkei Avot 4:1 teaches us, who is the wise one? It's the one who learns from every person. He was quick to provide a meal to his father. He held off on killing Yaakov in order not to increase his father's pain. And he married his cousin upon learning that his Canaanite wives grieved his parents. Sure, his execution was terrible. Wickedness still broke out because of the fact that it was innate to his character. He did not live a holy life and he did not desire to. He, much like today's world, as well as many Christians in our culture, disdained the Torah and its service. They saw some benefit to honoring parents, some benefit to some certain aspects of morality, but at the end of the day, he didn't want to have anything to do with the Torah. And this is not something we should learn from him. But the way that he honored his father and went to extreme lengths to do so, that is something we should understand and characterize. Even still, he spoke harshly to his father. When he tells him, get up, Dad, he tells him, rise up, Father, as opposed to the please rise, Father, which was offered by Yaakov, much more kind, much more compassionate language. Esav also spoke very coldly and disrespectfully regarding his father's death. When he says, the days of mourning for my father will soon be here. He's going to die soon. Why would you say that? Why would you try to say that? Yeah, I hope my father dies soon. That's a very cold, very disrespectful way to mention your parents' death. That being said, we can learn from Esav's behavior. Doing what is right must be done in a kind and considerate way. It's not enough to do what's right. We have to do it in a kind and considerate way. For instance, our speech should not only be meaningful and free of any prohibited types of talk, falsehood, gossip, slander, etc., but they should be refined, kind, considerate, and delicate like Jacob's was. Or as Paul teaches us in Colossians 4:6, your word should always be with grace, as if seasoned with salt, and be aware how it is appropriate for you to answer each person. So that is today's reading in Genesis chapter 28, verses 5 through 28:9.